Hello, my name is Eric Michael Loyd. I have a master's in psychology, neuropsychology concentration. I wanted to read something that I actually forgot about from working with guardian ad litem with abused, neglected, and abandoned children. This was actually primed when I watched a video of Jordan Peterson and his retorts labeled as angry, which I didn't think were particularly angry, but who knows, maybe it was another person's perspective. Either way, this article is from Violence and Victims, 2008 edition, volume 23, chapter 3, page 301 to 314. The author's manuscript. The title is A Review of Research on Women's Use of Violence with Male Intimate Partners. The authors are Suzanne C. Swan, Ph.D., Laura J. Gambone, M.A., and David L. Snow, Ph.D. Abstract. This article provides a review of research literature on women who use violence with intimate partners. The central purpose is to inform service providers in the military and civilian communities who work with domestically violent women. The major points of this review are as follows. A. Women's violence usually occurs in the context of violence against them by their male partners. B. In general, women and men perpetrate equivalent levels of physical and psychological aggression, but evidence suggests that men perpetrate sexual abuse, coercive control, and stalking more frequently than women, and that women also are much more frequently injured during domestic violence incidents. C. Women and men are equally likely to initiate physical violence in relationships involving less serious situational couple violence, quote unquote, and in relationships in which serious and very violent intimate terrorism occurs. Men are much more likely to be perpetrators and women victims. D. Women's physical violence is more likely than men's violence to be motivated by self-defense and fear, whereas men's physical violence is more likely than women's to be driven by control motives. Studies of couples in mutually violent relationships find more negative effects for women than for men. And F, because of the many differences in behaviors and motivations between women's and men's violence, interventions based on male models of partner violence are likely not effective for many women. Keywords: women's violence, women's aggression, partner abuse, domestic violence. How are you going to love me, hurt me, and abuse me at the same time? You can't love me and abuse me. A sizable minority of individuals arrested for domestic violence each year in the United States is female. Miller, 2005. For example, a study conducted in Tennessee found that 16% of those arrested for intimate partner violence were female. 16%. Feder and Henning, 2005, in Concord, New Hampshire, when comprised 35% of those arrested. Miller, 2005. Many of these women are court-mandated to receive services, such as Batterer Intervention Program or Anger Management Program. Miller, 2005. The military also provides services for a large number of women identified as committing physical abuse against a spouse. One study of 2,991 Air Force personnel who committed physical abuse against a spouse found that 23% of the offenders were female. Buster, Milner, Mollerstrom, Saha, and Harris, 2002. Another study of reports of spouse abuse in the Army Central Registry from 1989 to 1997 found that 33% of persons identified as domestic violence offenders were women. McCarl et al., 1999. To aid those involved in the provision of services to women and their females involved in domestic violence, the following sections provide a review of key findings from research on women's use of violence against male intimate partners. The review includes a discussion of the prevalence of women's commission of different types of aggressive behaviors and how that compares to the prevalence of men's commission of such behaviors, the prevalence of intimate partner violence among military personnel, ways in which women's violence often differs from men's violence, gender differences in the gender differences in the physical in physical and gender differences in physical and psychological impact of gender differences in go back to that gender differences in the physical and psychological impact of domestic violence, gender differences in motivations for using violence, and characteristics of women who use violence against male intimate partners. In the next part, I'll read the section titled Prevalence of Women's Perpetration of Different Types of Abusive Behaviors. Thank you for your time. I don't want to make these videos too lengthy.